we're leaving, we're locking up the office. We're in the vestibule up on the 15th floor of our building in New York City. And he goes, Andrew, do you mind if I ask you a question? It's my boss. Sure, Peter, go ahead. Well, somebody from the CIA approached me, and they're interested in the places we're working, the people we're working with, and the data that we're collecting. Do you think it's a good idea that I speak with them? And he just said a lot of things which just set off all my alarms, because I came from I'm a product of, the so-called deep state of the national security complex. I held a top secret clearance. And here's my boss telling me that he had a side conversation with the CIA. And I have all these immediate thoughts. Was he really talking to someone from the CIA? Was it someone pretending to be from the CIA?
Exactly.
Because I'm like, does this guy know what he's dealing with?
Exactly.
And, I had to say something. I said, Peter, it never hurts to speak with them. There could be money in it. And it was, I think, a very honest, direct assessment of what he had just told me. We made small talk. We went down the elevator and we went our separate ways. I walked home to my place up on the 45th Street, and that was the end of it. Well, over the next, several weeks, in between meetings at the coffee cooler, I had asked Peter, I'm like, hey, how's that thing with the CIA going? And, he wouldn't say much, but, sort of indicated that it was progressing. And about the third time I asked him, he was mum about it. He didn't want to talk about it anymore. And so I don't know if he was trying to tell me what he was actually up to because I was from that world, or if he just really wanted my honest opinion. I have no idea. But now, fast forward to SARS-CoV-2, COVID, and everything that's happened, it's very clear to me that Peter Daszak was probably used as a CIA asset to obtain access to that laboratory in the way that we obtained access to that laboratory. Because mind you, it was well known in my circles going all the way back to when I was a PhD student that this laboratory in Wuhan was essentially the Chinese military's bioweapons laboratory. So how would you get access to it, right? They're not going to allow Westerners to just come in. And where Senator Rand Paul and a number of other congressmen have been completely wrong about this in opinion, and I've told them so in writing, is that this wasn't the U.S. government giving the Chinese $400,000 to conduct gain-of-function research. I mean, just think about how preposterous this is.
Yeah, they don't need the money.
They don't need the money.
Right.
So what do they need? What do you think?
Technical expertise, I would think.
And what else? The actual technology.
Yeah.
So the technical expertise and the technology. So the trade that was made is that we were actually transferring advanced biotechnology from Dr. Ralph Barrick's laboratory to the Chinese for access to the laboratory so we could collect intelligence on it. And some of that might, fall under the umbrella of scientific diplomacy, which I'm actually a huge proponent of, but not with the Chinese. And that's where
So I don't know. I have no way to evaluate what you're saying, but except against things I've seen in other areas. And that is exactly how the world works. What you just said, that's how things really are, right? Is the U.S. government makes deals with people that they not really on their, whoever it is, Gaddafi, Maduro. I mean, there's long-standing and ongoing relationships with a lot of people. I think the public would be shocked to know we're in relationship with, but the motive is always the same. The closer I get, the more intel I can gather.
I think your assessment of the global scheme of how the U.S. government operates and formulates relationships is accurate.
Oh, I've seen it.
And I think a lot of that is doctrine. They want to try to obtain close relationships with the highest ranking government officials possible. And sometimes the methods and how they do that are questionable.
But it's always the same. I mean, this literally happened to me the other day. You're talking to, a well-informed person and they're like, oh yeah, I knew so-and-so. It's like, what, how in the world were you connected to that person who's bad? Kind of the human equivalent of the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And it's like, well, because that person is someone who has a lot of information that we want.
Oh, absolutely. And I've met a number of intel agents from various agencies that showed me pictures of the very high profile evil people that they're working with.
Of course.
And I actually have no problem
Muammar
with that.
Gaddafi was working with Mossad and CIA.
Yeah.
Right. So, of course, and I'm not even attacking anybody at all. I'm just saying that is the actual truth of the world that I have seen personally. So,
And I agree with your truth. And I think the more questionable part is, why are we giving advanced technology to our enemies? And where this really gets strange is that back when I did work at EcoHealth Alliance, I did object to working with the Chinese. So the next phase of Predict funding is coming along, Predict 2.
Okay. So Predict is the program that you described earlier that supposedly monitors global wildlife populations to get a head start on preparing for a pandemic.
Well, to predict and forecast it.
Predict and forecast.
So maybe get a head start could be a more accurate framing, or at least have an assessment of what's circulating in the area. And that's probably a fair characterization. But Predict 2, they're basically going to continue this boondoggle operation and expand the portfolio research with China. And once I was promoted to vice president, they put me onto the Predict program at my own request, because it was sort of the sexy thing that EcoHealth Alliance was doing, and I wanted to be a part of it because you get my name on more publications, more notoriety, and they wanted to make me a country coordinator, and I ended up being the one of the country coordinators for Sudan, and then also Jordan, and then Peter Daszak floated that I help him with China, and when that came up in the meeting, I said, I want nothing to do with this. I'm still, my top secret clearance is in good standing. I object to us doing the work with China. And I actually said in the meeting, I'm like, aren't you the slightest bit concerned that the Chinese are going to do something nefarious? Like they're going to steal our intellectual property. The Chinese have a pattern of lie, cheat, and steal. So why do we want to do this work with China? And I said that in the executive meeting, and I was trying to protect the company. More so even just the national security risk side of it. I was trying to protect the company. And, Peter gave a very political response that, the work with China is very important, and this relationship that we have with the Chinese is very important. Really, I think the only thing that was important to Peter was the fact that this Chinese, at least cut out of the bigger contract, was a lot of money.
Exactly.
And, he had already been sort of flipped as a intel asset to collect the Chinese in the lab. And this wasn't going away. And this was all the window dressing to make it look legitimate.
Yeah, I don't have any background information, so you could tell me anything, but everything you're saying sounds right to me, just based on what I have seen. Can I just back up a tiny bit and ask some practical questions about what EcoHealth Alliance was doing? So you said before you got to the portion where they were acting as an intel asset, which sounds right, you said they were collecting a library of viruses from around the world. How does that work? How do you collect a virus in Sudan, for example, any country? How do you do that?
Sure. So it's I guess in my mind, it's very straightforward, but typically first you form a relationship with the diplomatic mission. So the embassy, the consulate for the United States, they might refer you to either hospitals, professors, other academics, or company in country, or maybe you already have those relationships from past work that you've done. You then go on a trip to that country and you go sort of do an assessment of their laboratories. You collect sort of information, try to gauge, do these people have the capability? Do you know what they're doing? Are they going to spend our money wisely? So it's a business trip, and it's very business focused, and you're assessing their capabilities. Then once you have a good feeling with their capabilities, you begin the contracting process with that foreign entity. And if you're doing everything by the book, you run these people through U.S. government systems to make sure that they're not terrorists or evil people.
Right.
So we're not giving money to terrorists. That didn't happen at EcoHealth Alliance.
It did not happen?
It did not happen. I found out about that after the fact as well. But we try to figure out who these people are, and then if they're capable, oftentimes it's universities, either the ag school or at a foreign university, the veterinary school or human medical center. Then we formulate the contract, we send them the cash, and then they would either go out and collect the samples, or we would travel or have our personnel travel to go collect the samples. So if we're talking about bats, it depends what species you're dealing with.
Right.
But if you're dealing with bats, you set nets or traps in a bat cave, for example. You catch the bat in the net, and then you go out there in your personal protective equipment and you take fecal swabs, blood, saliva from the animal. And then you package that so the DNA will not be degrade and transport back to the laboratory. And then
Where's the laboratory?
Well, it depends on what country you're working in. So every country we had different agreements with contractually about who owned the samples, who would store the samples. And the other thing that's happening in the background here is that technology is advancing.
Yes.
Okay. So at one time in this type of research, you actually had to have the physical sample. Today, we're at a point you no longer have to have the physical sample. You can actually send the DNA or RNA code digitally to somebody else and they can recreate it.
Huh.
So this field has advanced tremendously over 10 years. And this is taking place, this advancement, while we're doing this work. Oftentimes, the samples then were physically transported back to the United States or mailed or shipped.
You can mail a deadly bat virus from a third world country to the U.S.?
Well, there's a manual from the CDC and USDA and HHS of how to transport samples. So yes, there are rules and process of how you can.
So almost all of that mail goes on commercial airliners.
Typically, and there's really not a whole lot of risk from a collected sample. First of all, you don't even know at this point whether there's a new deadly virus present in the sample.
In the bat shit or
in the bat shit, the saliva. Yeah. You have no clue. Once it gets back to the United States, then it goes to, at least at EcoHealth Alliance, it would go to Ian Lipkin's laboratory at Columbia University, where he was a specialist in, he's a pretty well-known viral epidemiologist with really good lab chops. And another doctor who worked with us named Simon Anthony would work with him to isolate and first identify and isolate new viruses or novel viruses. So that's where it typically took place. Then the mechanics of this or operations of this, that information or sample would be sent to another laboratory like Ralph Barrick's laboratory, where he would continue the work
down at Chapel Hill
and do the gain of function work.
It's just can I just approach this from an autistic perspective? So what you're saying is there are like people around the world in bat caves in some faraway country sending potentially novel and dangerous viruses to New York City, like all the time, and people are not even aware of this.
There's a huge, I wouldn't say huge, but I mean a non-trivial amount of these types of samples being shipped around the world globally. And if they're properly contained and packaged, it's really not that much of a risk. And actually, Dr. Ralph Barrick developed some of these methods of how to send what's called a chimeric virus on a sheet of paper and an envelope, which is low risk. The bigger risk becomes when you start to clone or replicate that agent at scale. Human medicine, public health, epidemiology, transmission risk, and how you look at this, you have to have a substantial quantity of a virus, which is a substance, mixed in the air or be exposed to it to become infected with it. Because you have an immune system that works. Okay. And sometimes you get exposed to these things and you don't even know it because your immune system fights it off. Right. So I think sometimes the risk is overblown and the fear around transporting samples. I think most of the time that's actually pretty low risk. There's been a series of transporting accidents which occurred from 2008 to 2012 or 14, I want to say, which actually led to the ban or partial ban on gain of function research.
What kind of accidents?
One of the high profile ones was that I think it was Bacillus anthracis was being shipped from one of our U.S. government BSL 4 laboratories under CDC control to another laboratory, and it went missing, and they found it sitting in the corner.
Some porch pirate stole it.
No, it wasn't a porch pirate, but they found it someplace and it wasn't properly secured or completely off the.
Yeah, I mean, we live in a world with like Chernobyl and misdiagnoses, and I mean, I believe in science. I think there are a lot of, rigorous, responsible scientists, but people make mistakes. I mean, over time and with scale, like mistakes will happen, right?
Well, and we actually dealt with this type of low probability, high consequence threat risk analysis all the time at San Diego National Laboratories. And the big issue is what you just brought up, the human in the loop. Usually the engineered systems, you can engineer those precisely to account for some whatever probability or consequence of risk, but it's always the human making a decision or behavior action involved in the system that makes a mistake, which causes some kind of catastrophic failure.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. So, okay, I was just interested. So then you say that EcoHealth Alliance was compiling a library of these viruses? They'd be stored in one place?
Well, yes, they had a digital library at EcoHealth Alliance, and then there's other systems that the U.S., or I should say, not only the United States, but the global virologist community maintain of genetic information on viruses.
Well, Grand Canyon University is not like most American colleges. It focuses on the things that actually matter. It is not a ripoff. It is the real thing. It's private, affordable, Christian university located in the heart of Phoenix, one of the largest universities in the country, actually. At Grand Canyon University, education is more than academics. It is about opportunity, the chance for every student to live out the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Rights are not given by the government. They were bestowed at birth, at conception, by God. That's just a fact. And Grand Canyon University is not going to lie to your kids and claim otherwise. It tells the truth. So you're thinking, a quality education is rare, so this probably costs a fortune. Colleges constantly jack up their costs. They probably do the same. Well, they don't, actually. GCU has maintained the same tuition for 17 straight years. They're not in education to get rich at the expense of students. The whole thing is actually about learning. How refreshing. With flexible online classes, hybrid learning options, GCU offers 340 academic programs. Students benefit from a collaborative learning environment, dedicated faculty, personalized support to help them achieve their goals. The pursuit to serve is yours. Let it flourish. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University, private, Christian, affordable. gcu.edu. Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We hope you'll subscribe to it. And by the way, you can hit the little bell on there and get notifications every time we produce a video. We hope you'll do that also.